Hello and welcome to the first survival channel dedicated to people dedicated to prepping. I'm Bug Out Bubba, the real all-American prepper. Hey y'all, Bubba here. It's been a while and I'm sorry for that. Winter was not very kind and I'm way behind on just about everything. Taking a break here on the screen porch. I was watching a video by Tyler on his channel, Let's Talk About Prepping. Now, this is a response to Tyler's video called Genetic Dead Ends and a Second Great Die-Off, or something to that effect. I'm not by any means refuting anything that Tyler said in that video. In fact, his points were pretty much spot on, other than perhaps the one I'm challenging. More than anything, I just want to expand on his ideas, share them with my own subscribers, and inject some of my own thoughts into his subject matter. Tyler's video addressed a second marked die-off, one that he believes will take place after the initial die-off caused by disruptions to the food chain and the violence caused by that disruption. We totally agree on that aspect of a second die-off. Where my opinion differs is the cause and or the order of this second die-off. In his video, Tyler expounded on an issue that he foresees affecting the few who survive this food disruption, only to lose their lives after things begin to normalize. Deaths that will be attributed to physical issues not related to starvation or violence. He cited several different causes for this second event, none of which I actually disagree. Among them are death in childbirth of mothers and babies, troubled births that require more expertise than common knowledge or common sense will allow. I think he's absolutely correct there. I might add to that suicide related to postpartum depression, especially in cases where a child is lost. Maybe even infanticide in cases where the bleak prospects for the newborn child. Also, I think there will be child deaths where malnourished mothers have insufficient milk production with no alternative sources. Tyler also mentioned deaths of those infirmed from birth and birth defects and abnormalities that in good times are preventable or at least manageable. That too is quite likely, as there will certainly be a reduction of prenatal care and immune system replenishing nourishment. There will also be many handicapped individuals whose care suffers from inattention in a world where food gathering takes precedence over every other chore. Tyler included deaths from childhood illness as well, afflictions that are currently treatable or typically preventable with the use of vaccines. And there are deaths related to genetic defects such as diabetes, heart defects, or slow progressing diseases contracted before SHTF, diseases such as hepatitis. And may I dare mention venereal disease. I might have also mentioned suicide due to insanity and depression. In general, Tyler feels that a second die-off will occur in the absence of the medical care and medications that we currently take for granted. As I said, these thoughts should not be taken lightly. These deaths will certainly play a role in a post-SHTF misery. But as I see it, for these precepts to become an issue, an individual must first survive another aspect of SHTF, which I feel is commonly assumed to be less complicated than it actually is. While there are hordes of videos available to teach the skills necessary to produce food after our stockpiles are depleted, I believe that those videos are poorly representative of the scale necessary for post-SHTF survival. Raised bed and container gardens are not going to produce food sources sufficient to feed individuals, let alone large groups of people. The same channels telling you that significant group size is paramount for survival seldom emphasize the enormity of post-SHTF gardening. Thousands of otherwise prepared individuals will die before anything returns to normal, simply because preppers have no clue of just how large a garden is required to feed even one person per year. Nor do these channels emphasize the necessity for stockpiled fertilizer, irrigation supplies, or pest control in these post-SHTF gardens. True to form, none of these channels seem to find issue with these incredibly lame seed vaults, which contain almost explicitly caloric deficit seed. In the future, I'll be producing a video detailing this monstrous task and estimating the needed seed and the varieties of seed for a sufficient post-SHTF garden. It's not something that you'll want to guess at. Meanwhile, I hope you will research for yourself so that when I do this video, you'll understand that I'm not just pulling your leg. Quarter acre may have been sufficient to supplement a pioneer family in bygone years, but you'll notice that I'm talking about supplementing. They had a much bigger variety of natural foods to supplement their gardens and much less competition for those wild resources. And what will you be supplementing 6 months to a year after it hits the fan? For most of us, there will be nothing left to supplement. What we grow in our garden will be the entirety of our food source. It might take decades for wildlife to recover. All these folks telling you that they plan to grow a garden in their backyard or supply their needs growing food in those tiny raised beds, barrels, buckets, whatever. All these folks are leading preppers to a mass grave. At best, they'll sustain themselves to the end of that first growing season. Those fortunate enough to store a bit of this first garden will find that their long-term storage preps were just as insufficient as their garden plan. From reading comments left on my videos, I can say confidently that few preppers realize how many quart jars are required to store food for even one individual per year. Or that the content of those quart jars is of even greater importance than the count. And please don't tell me about your hobby goat herd, your backyard chicken flock, or your pet rabbit collection. Animals eat too. Not only will you be hoeing your garden, you'll be hoeing their garden. Do you have a sufficient plan for that? Have you procured a means to process your grains as to increase their digestibility? Do you know the calorie count necessary for your livestock? Do you have storage plan for their food? Do you realize that the success of your current herd has relied on the balanced diet, antibiotics, and supplements built into your factory produced feeds, supplements that won't be found in your straight from the garden animal feed. As for the following season, do you have a plan for that? A plan that produces enough seed for years to come? And how will you properly store that seed? Have you investigated that? Do you know what it takes? Are you aware that most of today's gardens contain foods that don't replenish the calories consumed while bringing them to bear? Do you even understand what a caloric deficit food is? I could probably continue for an hour with this line of questioning, but the point I'm sure is made. If you plan to fail for phase 2 of Shit Hit the Fan, you'll likely be part of what I believe will be a second starvation die-off. You will fail to proceed to a third die-off, which I believe Tyler's video explained quite sufficiently. I hope that I've offended a few of you. I hope you dispute these assertions. Sometimes the effort to prove someone wrong is the effort that proves them right. If you want to survive, you need to get a realistic gardening plan together now while research is easy and handy. Prepping will not end just because it hits the fan. It will be, in fact, more and more difficult. You never know what weather events might occur, what diseases or pests might affect your SHTF garden. And if you do have animals, the same rings true for them. If this sounds like too much effort, I suggest you become a highly proficient bushcrafter and move you and your family very near a desolate wilderness area where wildlife will not be so obliterated in a world without rule of law. Either way, I wish you the best. I hope you never need your preps. And if you want to survive, hit like, share, and subscribe.